the podcast starts.
Hello, dear listener. Welcome back. If you're rejoining us to the podcast where we talk about horror, sometimes we talk about other things, and more often than not, we swear. I am TD Velasquez, as usual. As always, you are welcome to call me Dan, and today I have the great pleasure of being joined by the writer Ian Winterton. Hello, Ian.
Hello, Dan. How you doing? Just the two of us today.
I'm very well, mate. How are you?
Pretty good, actually. Finally got a gap in between scripts, so I watched The Crown all day, which is the most un-horror adjacent thing you could ever think of.
Right, I've never watched The Crown.
It's very well. I don't know. We could probably talk for.
I'm slightly tempted.
The first season is brilliant, and the
Right.
second season's pretty good, and the rest of it is definitely prestige television. And even this latest season, which is all the 90s, Princess Diana and stuff, still has, like, episode 3 is all about Mohammed Al Fayed and Dodi Fayed, and it starts in 1946 and sort of ends with Dodi meeting Diana, and it's absolutely brilliant hour of television. You can probably go straight in and watch that because it's a standalone.
Right. Okay.
It does that a lot. It has sort of standalone little mini plays. I mean, it's written by a playwright, but anyway, people aren't tuning in to listen to us talk about The Crown.
Although while we're on the Crown, it does always make me think about An American Werewolf in London. Do you remember the credits at the end?
Yeah. Me too. It does, actually. Yeah, that is very true. 1981. I always know what year they got married because it's 1981.
And yeah, so the final screen of credits at the end of American Werewolf in London, it has that wonderful bit where it says the usual thing about all persons depicted in this motion picture are fictional, and any resemblance to any real persons, living, dead, or undead, is purely coincidental.
Yeah.
And then underneath it says the producers would like to extend their heartiest best wishes to Lady Diana and Prince Charles on the occasion of their marriage.
Yeah. No.
I always found it spooky because in one of the first kind of encyclopedic guides to cinema that I read as a teenager, it listed the key films of each year up to that point, and American Werewolf was one of the key films of 81, and right next to it was Chariots of Fire.
Well,
and Chariots of Fire also has a relevant credit.
Well, it's in this episode I just mentioned, because one of the things that happens is Dodi persuading, which I didn't really realise, and you know what it's made me do? I've never seen Chariots of Fire, so I ordered it for £1.30.
Right, wow.
On Amazon, the DVD.
I watched it on my 30th birthday, Ian. It was one of those films that had always been there through my whole life and some I'd never seen.
Yeah, but I'm 50 and I'm about to watch it when it arrives next week.
Well, that'll be an interesting chat. But yeah, one of the first things you see is that credit executive producer Dodi Fayed.
Yeah. And they get, and here's my first clang of the episode. I interviewed Lord Putnam. About 20 years ago over the phone.
Oh, excellent.
And my main memory is he was really enthusiastic about the sound mix on I was interviewing him about I think he had to list his 5 top war films or something, and Saving Private Ryan, he said he always gets people to watch it in his cinema at his house, because the sound mix is like one of the most perfect cinematic experiences ever.
Right.
Which I'll be talking. One of my things tonight we'll be talking about sound design.
And me too.
If we segue into why we're here.
Yes.
Attention to the crew of the commercial vessel Nostromo. A word of warning. A word of warning. A word of of warnings. Alien. Coming this summer to a theater near you.
Well, so, as the listener will probably already know if you've seen the title of the episode, today's a Revisitations episode, as Ian and I have done on 3 separate occasions, with Kirsty for one of them. We'll be discussing one of the Alien franchise, but we're going to be discussing the classic original. And because it's a movie that so many people love and is endlessly talked about and written and spoken about, we decided to approach it, or Ian suggested, we approach it in a slightly different manner than our standard just kind of chats around the movie. We're going to, I think the listener can take it as read that we both love the movie Alien from 1979, directed by Ridley Scott, and we could both go on endlessly about all the things we love about it, but we've chosen to limit ourselves to our 5 favourite scenes or moments or elements each from the movie. We're going to go through the list, and Ian's rule that was given to me was that neither of us were allowed to choose the chest burster sequence because that's kind of too obvious. And it is the major iconic moment of the movie. So what we're going to do is run down in starting at number 5, both comparing our 5s and then going forward, obviously down to 1. And if ever, each time, Ian, we reveal one of our choices, if I say something and you know that you've already mentioned it, but it's higher up your list, we'll wait to talk about it when we come to it on your list. If you know what I mean.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because I just thought when you said, "Oh, let's do Alien," I was a bit like, I literally went, "Oh, Alien," like, and it's weird because it is literally one of my favorite films, but I just thought, how the hell do we talk about Alien? Because it's easy to talk about things when you can criticize them or critique them. With this, I genuinely think this is almost a perfect film. And then I went, and then as soon as I thought, what if we get into the absolute little granular, at a granular level, like the stuff that when you really know a film really well, you go, like, the first thing that popped into my head was my number 5, which was when Lambert says, "I like griping," when they're walking through the...
Okay. Before we get into the details of that, just to warn listeners, just assume we're going to spoil anything and everything about this movie.
At some point in the film, if you haven't seen this, Lambert says, "I like griping."
Yes, I imagine we're going to go into greater spoiler areas than that, but it could happen at any point. So basically, we're assuming that you've seen the movie. If you haven't, go watch it before you listen to this. It's actually on Disney Plus. So if you've got that, you have the movie, even if you didn't know. So your number 5 is I Like Griping.
Yeah.
My number 5. I'll let you go first, but I'll just let you know what's coming up for me. So my number 5 is Ash's Unnatural Run. But I'll explain that in a minute.
That is that's good.
So I Like Griping, Ian. That's
well, it's kind of... It was a thing that really popped in my head ever since I watched this. Really, God, whenever I first watched it, well, I could wank on about when I first watched it because it was a really magical experience, which I don't think I've mentioned on this podcast before. Remember, I have, but
I think did you watch it in black and white?
In black and white, and I didn't know what I was going to watch, and it was in my bedroom, and I was 13.
Okay,
and it was sort of, I was allowed to watch TV, but I was in bed. And it was, really small black and white, and the picture was one of those ones, and it had a big round aerial on the back that you had to sort of touch and just get just right, and then the snow would stop, and it'd be a really clear but black and white picture, and then as I settled down, I went, "What's this?" And it was like, "Oh, that's space. Well, that will probably be all right." And it was the weird music, and it was literally the opening shot of Alien with the Nostromo going through. And I watched the entire thing and was terrified and gripped in equal measure. And I kind of vaguely knew there was a thing with aliens and eggs because I think I'd read a comic strip in White Dwarf, of all things, the role-playing magazine, which had a sort of Traveller, the role-playing game comic strip. So I think I was aware of it as a thing people had referenced, but I'd never really seen it before. And so to watch it on black and white, like it was beamed to me, like I was there, because it actually works really well in black and white.
I can imagine, and you know, there's so much kind of retro futuristic technology in Alien, which maybe wasn't entirely intended to look retro at the time, but it's aged wonderfully well. I think all those kind of blocky little monitors that they're looking at, and fuzzy images. And I also saw it for the first time on a very similar TV, but it was a colour one, and I had to adjust the aerial. But yes. And I seem to remember that I was so frightened by it, but my dad walked in at one point because my grandma was staying with us at the time, so me and my mum and dad had to all sleep in the same room. But luckily Alien was on before my mum and dad came to bed, so I was sitting there in the room watching it, and halfway through the film my dad just walked in and saw how frightened I was and said, "It's all right, I'll turn it off if you want." I was like, no, leave it on. And he went, "Dan, you are insane." That's just come back to me. And weirdly, I now remember as well that before I saw Alien, I'd written about it, because one of my first year assignments in secondary school was to write the Encyclopedia of Horror. And so A was Alien, but I've not seen it. So I wrote an inaccurate... I knew that they came from inside you, but I didn't know how the eggs worked.
Right.
So I just made up that they enter your body as microbes and then grow inside you, which is sort of...
Which would be less cinematic.
Yes, Alien Covenant. Cough. Anyway.
Yes, that's for another podcast. We must not stray beyond Alien.
No. Stick to Alien.
There be monsters.
So, Ian, why is I Like Griping one of your moments then?
Well, this kind of metastasized from I Like Griping into, as I was watching it. At first, I'll say, rewatching it, I just finished my script and I was like, do you know what? It's on Disney. I can't even be bothered to go and get the DVD. It's on Disney. To watch a DVD, I'd have to plug things in, go and get the PS4 from upstairs and plug it in. I thought, it's on Disney. And it's weird because we've just got a new TV. And it's, you know how really good HD, it's like a modern TV. It's our first TV in about 6 years. And modern stuff looks weird on it. Because you know how stuff's a bit too clear.
Yes,
and modern stuff looks really weird on it, but it's
shot in high def, but also you're seeing it in high def.
It's a bit like somebody's just got their fucking iPhone out.
Even
though it's like the best cinematography ever, but it looks weird.
I mean, I think that's why I didn't enjoy The Witch the first time I saw it, to be honest, because I saw it on a TV, a kind of huge high def TV, and it just. It felt too video-y.
Took you out of it. But weirdly, when I put it on Disney, the title card for 20th Century Fox was so grainy. I thought I was going to have the opposite problem, a bit like when I watched The Exorcist on Amazon a couple of years ago. And it was like, my God, this is the worst print I've ever seen. But then I think we got the best of both worlds, is it looked amazing, but wasn't so crystal clear that it ruined everything. Because I remember watching Aliens on Blu-ray and going, I love this film. I watched it on Blu-ray at my friend's house. I was like, that bit looks like Thunderbirds now, because I can see the models, and I couldn't see the models before. But anyway, this was just like the perfect experience. It was an afternoon, so I was not working, I was not writing, and it was in between. It was just, I just had my lunch and then just lay on the sofa and watched it and made notes and just thought, it was like seeing the film anew. So I thank you for suggesting this now. So enthusiastic about this movie all over again, because it was just perfect. Even though I've seen it so many times, the only time I found myself going, I've seen this too many times now, was right at the end, like right when she's in the pod. And I was like, I could probably turn off now, even though I didn't, because I literally know this frame by frame. I know every frame of this, and there's not any surprises. Whereas the other stuff, it's quite a dense movie when it comes to all the different dialogue and different scenes and and watching the different plot lines. So, but yeah, so I like griping, always stuck in my head ever since I was 13. But then I just came to appreciate the sardonic tone, and then it just made and I was watching it this time even more than others. Lambert's, I genuinely think she's the best actor. I mean, everyone's really bloody good. I genuinely think Veronica Cartwright is the best actor in the whole film. She's amazing, and she embodies what Ridley Scott was aiming for, which was and the screenwriters were, when they did Dark Star, that it's oil rig workers, it's blue collar in space. It's the opposite of 2001, and she is the most perfectly cast because she just seems like a real person in space, and these things are happening to her. And so I like griping, but also the other one was I love the way she goes, "Oh God," during the chest burster.
Oh, the chest burster, yeah.
And then I believe Ridley Scott didn't really tell them what was going to happen, so she got a face full of sheep's blood or pig's blood, whatever it was. Yeah. And so and I also always love that bit where she goes, "Ah!" because she's just hit in the face with John Hurt's blood. And I just but just in every scene, like her reactions to, when the guys are sort of going on, I know what I want to eat, and I'm making trying to go a bit blue, and she goes, "Oh God," but then has a smile, and it's just so well acted. It's like all of them are brilliant, but she's just, I can't take my eyes off her. She's absolutely brilliant. And then this is where it comes into sound design, which I guess is my is probably a second choice of mine as a sound.
Well, and I want to talk about the score as well. So maybe leave that.
Not the score. I didn't pick the score, but the actual sound design, and it's just Veronica Cartwright's death screams chill me to the bone every single time. When she's going,
it's amazing.
It's absolutely chills me to the bone every single time. And this time, so I had the TV turned up really loud on my new TV. It got me all over again properly. It's horrible, brilliant.
Absolutely, and I've always felt like that. And the way that you don't really see her dead, you see her legs kind of swinging with blood dripping down them, don't you?
Yeah.
And that reveal, and then Ripley, when she looks at Parker and Lambert's corpses, she visibly shudders.
Yeah.
But I think you're right about Veronica Cartwright. I don't think there's a bad performance in the film. Well, they are all amazing.
Yeah,
and they're amazing actors.
I'm not casting aspersions on any of the cast.
Yeah. But everybody in it is generally amazing. In everything you see. But Veronica Cartwright is probably the only one who was already like an experienced genre actor.
Oh, right.
Because she was in Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Of course, yeah.
And the ending of that is a moment of terror that's entirely sold by her. I've not seen that movie for a couple of decades. I really must.
That's one for a future episode because I haven't seen that for about 25 years at least.
Right. Yeah,
so
yeah.
That was probably due a
similar for me.
No,
it's great. Yeah. But no, she is absolutely fantastic, and actually one of her lines and the way she delivers it factors into one of my later choices. But I won't spoil that for now.
Yeah.
So,
what's your number 5?
Are you happy? My number 5, as I said, is Ash's Unnatural Run.
Oh yes.
So one of the best things in the movie is the character of Ash, played brilliantly by Ian Holm. But the fact that when the script was rewritten by the producers, Walter Hill and David Giler, they took Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shushart's script and revamped it. The main thing that they added that wasn't previously in it at all, and Dan O'Bannon admitted this and said it was a good move. They added the character of Ash and the whole kind of plot line that there was a crew member there who had his own ulterior motive, and obviously it's a stunning reveal when it becomes clear that he's a droid later in the movie. But that I've chose this moment where they've landed on the planet, and Dallas and Lambert and Kane have gone to investigate the crashed ship, and in the meantime, Parker and Brett are in the engine section, and Ash is all on his own, and he's kind of communicating with them over screens. But once they get into the ship, there's no communication possible. So you get a lot of these nice moments where Ash is just kind of sitting around with not much to do. And you get little hints that he's a bit different. And my favourite is just this bit where he just does a little jog on the spot.
Oh, yeah.
For literally a second to wake himself up or something. And
it sort of foreshadows. I thought when I saw that, that really foreshadows when he does his weird spinning.
Yes.
Which is always really disturbing.
Well, and I did watch, unlike you, Ian, I didn't get the chance to watch the whole film again for this one, but obviously I know the film really well, and I did go back and re-watch all the bits that I'd chosen. I actually wrote a longer list and then narrowed it down to 5 after I'd watched everything. And looking back at this little jog, it's a really quick moment, and he doesn't really do anything that would be impossible for a human. It's not sped up or anything. He just does a quick movement. But there's a very subtle element of the sound design that they've just put this little sound of movement on that makes him sound a bit more rubbery or synthetic, to use that word. And Ash is different all the way through, and you're always thinking what's going on with him. And there's that great conversation where Ripley says, "I don't trust him," and things like that. And also, I'm sure we'll talk about the dialogue style later on. Everybody's talking in this kind of supernaturalistic, semi-improvised way, but Ash comes out with these ornate, slightly weird sentences.
But he's like a creepy C-3PO.
Yeah, and and he ends a couple of times. He says something like, he asks a question but ends it with the word yes. Like, so now I'll get back to my work. Yes. Yeah. Which, like, nobody ever does that.
Yeah. No.
Except weirdly, Brian Glover's character in Alien 3 does it. And I think that just shows that that's the same writerly hands at work, possibly. But I don't know anybody who, outside of an Alien movie, who speaks like that. There's that lovely barbed little scene where he's examining the face hugger, which has not come off Kane's face yet, and Ripley just kind of gently interrogates him and says, you broke quarantine when you let him on board and things like that, and the sort of wonderfully kind of passive aggressive way he responds to her, and anyway, that's moving away from the moment that I chose.
Moving into one of my choices actually is the whole. Well, it's almost like the whole Ripley Ash plot line is just really nicely done.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that.
But I've got it down as my number 5. But maybe I can make it my next one. But just. Do you mean your number 1? My number 1. We're not doing them. We're not doing them in a sort of. This is my definite favourite thing.
Right. Okay.
Just they're all good. But just I had as my next. Well, one of my choices is that whole scene really, but just you do your job and I'll do mine.
Yes.
but then it's weird because all these times I've watched this film, I do not know how many times. God, I mean, it might be pushing 100. It's probably, he's got watched a lot over the years. But just the fact he drinks milk at the end,
right.
which weirdly we always now we take the piss out of. Could Ridley Scott envisage of nothing other than white fluid inside his androids, no matter what?
Right.
Even it's not just in this universe; it's in his new thing on, what's it called? The one about the androids bringing up humans on far.
The Raised by Wolves.
Yeah, Raised by Wolves. Yeah. So the androids in that have got white fluid for blood.
Right.
Yeah, but I was just like, it's very weird. He drinks some milk. Can I read anything into that? Is that sort of some sort of android juice, or is he just drinking some milk? Did they have any idea that was anything other than him drinking milk when they were doing that scene? Is there any intent?
Yeah, it might just be a clever bit of foreshadowing, because
I'm
pretty sure it probably is milk when he spits it all out. They've just got Ian Holm to
loads of this milk
drink
around.
a load of milk.
Yeah, just drink some milk. But yeah, no. But I just like the little every time they sort of pick up on sort of the Ripley sort of raising suspicion. Her sort of she's the one who's more suspicious than the others. Because one thing, I mean, this isn't on my list, but one thing that's really interesting to watch is just how it's structured, how certain things in a screenplay, you probably, the fact that you don't know you're not entirely sure who's going to die next, because it's played with structure in such a subtly clever way, in that you don't quite know whose story it is. It doesn't start with Ripley center stage. I mean, spend a long time looking at John Hurt getting, doing brilliant work of waking up, convincing.
Yeah.
And then you automatically kind of think, it's probably Tom Skerritt's. He looks like he should be the hero because he's got a beard and he's the guy and he's
the captain
all-American.
And he's the only one who gets time alone. He's like everybody else throughout the movie is talking over each other and interrupts, whereas he is the one who has the authority to go, I've got something important to tell you, and everybody goes quiet and he tells them what to do.
No, I think when he gets killed, that's a really good. That really is like, you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it's really interesting seeing the deaths because they're so familiar to us. We know exactly all of them, but it's weird seeing how they because they've got the sort of, I mean, this is again one of my things, but they've got the way they go, somebody's going to die at this point, people are going to die in this film, and it's very clever how, if you haven't seen the film, they managed to make you not be able to expect exactly who it's going to be and exactly when it's going to happen. Because they have that whole bit with the dead face hugger, which is brilliant, and no one dies, and then one of my lines is just one of my later picks is a link into one of the deaths, but it's not to do with the deaths in a way, but although thinking about it probably is, because it's a way of building suspense. But anyway, we'll get on to that. So
yes,
what's your next pick?
So my number 4 is hang on, I've put them in ascending order of I kind of wrote them all down at random, and then gave them an order, so I have to keep looking up and down the list. My number 4 is My Lucky Star. You are. I remember one of the first times I watched this. I mean, one of the first times I watched it was with my youngest sister Eileen, and I remember when Ripley comes out and starts singing to herself, she went, "Oh, she's losing it," and I just think I think that's what is happening. She's in a high stress situation. She's also breathing pure oxygen or something. She's just got a spacesuit on. She's trying to keep it together, and she's trying to distract herself. I think it's just a really unusual move at the end of a movie when all the other characters have gone, your hero character then freaks out. I can see, in quite a lot of movies, something happens to them in the middle of Act 2 or something, which they then come back from. But I love that she seems so vulnerable, but at the same time, she's also, through that, it's a really systematic approach she takes to how am I going to fight the alien when I'm on my own with no weapons or anything. It's like, well, I'll get a spacesuit on, I'll get a spear gun, a piton gun thing, and I'll decompress the chamber and knock it into space. And then the bit where once she starts to wake the alien up and it starts to crawl out of the kind of the duct that it's been nestled in. She knows that she's got to stay there at the controls, but she doesn't want to totally freak out, so she just turns around so she can't see it, which I think it's just such a lovely move. She's on a swivel chair, much as I am now, listener. Yeah. And she just kind of pivots away from it for ages and just keeps singing to herself.
Yeah. No, that I mean, she totally sells everything she does, doesn't she? But yeah, she totally sells that. She's terrified, but she's got whatever it is that makes, not every human has it, but humans do have it, that ability, calm under fire, that ability to have a bit of ice in your veins. That means you scared shitless after, but you have the fight, not the flight. Jean, and she convinces completely that she's got enough of that you don't think, oh, this is corny. I mean, I guess Lambert is the opposite. Lambert very convincingly goes to pieces and won't get out of the way.
And you have to have both of those things in this kind of movie, don't you? You have to have someone who tells the audience just how scary this situation is, and then somebody else who represents rising above it, being able to take control of it. But what I love about that moment at the end is that it's kind of both those things at once. She is taking control of the situation, but she is also manifestly terrified in a way that she's not been earlier in the movie, she does go through various levels of stress and distress, but quite often she seems cold-hearted. She's particularly tough. She's obviously quite tough. But in this scene, the moment she steps out of that kind of wardrobe where she's been hiding, she immediately goes, okay, and you can hear it in her voice. Of how she just, she doesn't want to be there. She wants to be anywhere but there. She probably wishes she'd not made it onto the shuttle and she'd been blown up with the rest of them.
In a weird way, the performances remind me, probably not uncoincidentally, considering when it was made, of like the sort of naturalistic way, in Jaws, where it's it's happening to real people. It's one of the magic and one of the sort of thing that makes Jaws work, and this is Jaws in space in lots of ways, isn't it?
And Texas Chainsaw Massacre as well, which Ridley Scott, apparently watched over and over again, before shooting, and I think that really contributed to the supernaturalism, not supernatural, but the extreme naturalism of it, the mumblecore kind of approach of the performances and everything. I think I've recently rewatched Texas Chainsaw, and I think that it's an amazing piece of work. Alien has a sliver more of traditional things like character arcs and things like its approach to character is a bit more structured than Texas Chainsaw, which really does feel uncomfortably like just watching a bunch of random people wander into a terrible situation. But
we should do that. I've got the DVD of it because I won it in a thing, and I've still never watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre apart from when I watched it when I was 18, and I found I think I might have said this before, but in a double bill with before it was some film called Bad Taste. By some unknown director called Peter Jackson.
That's one hell of a double bill.
So we watched that, and that was hilarious. And we were all 18, sixth formers. And then we watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I remember two of my female friends were crying. and one of them took her glasses off so she couldn't see the screen. And
Right.
I watched it and was like, that was horrible. I don't think I love my horror films and scary films, but I found it distressing and didn't want to watch it again. So it'd be interested to see what 50-year-old me makes of it. Like, because it is, it is regarded as an amazingly well-made film.
Well, having just rewatched it, I think it stands up and that there's plenty to say. I've also rewatched some of the later Texas Chainsaw films, and those make for interesting comparison. But that's way off topic.
Naturalism in horror.
Yeah, but the relevance to Alien is that I think there's a bit more in the script in terms of characters who they're friends with, what their kind of plot roles are, but it's all convincingly covered, disguised with the improvisational dialogue, and the kind of the reality of the environment. You do still just feel like you're just watching people wandering around at work, which is what Alien is. It's a workplace movie. The Nostromo they do live there, but only because they work there. They're heading home. They're not on holiday. They're not going for a road trip like the Chainsaw Kids. It is just a day at work, and there's that wonderful bit right very near the beginning when Dallas tells them that they've been ordered off course to investigate the distress signal. And Parker says, I'm not going to do that unless they pay me some more money to do that. That's not part of my contract. And then Ash says, no, actually it is, and if you don't do it, you won't have any money at all. They'll forfeit you. You'll forfeit. Yes. and Parker immediately goes, okay, we're going in, aren't we?
Yeah. No. It's all part of that 70s naturalism, which, Exorcist is in that. In that sort of thing as well, which is I guess maybe it's a reaction to 60s grand, brilliant in their own way, but sort of grand horror of the 60s.
Yeah,
we've got Rosemary's Baby. We've got everything you can think of in the 70s is kind of very, very real.
I think I might be wrong. Maybe this is oversimplifying it, but I think the change in the 70s has a lot to do with the fact that cinematography and technological upgrades allowed shooting to happen without studio lights. So you got more shooting on location. You got more shooting on the fly. So filmmakers were able to develop a more kind of natural, a more kind of natural, kind of offhand way of setting up scenes and things. And you also got filmmakers like Robert Altman, whose 1970 movie MASH, of course, featured Tom Skerritt as one of the leads. And his stuff is really emblematic of the decade, really, in terms of the way the characters interact. But so what you got in Alien, interestingly, is it is an entirely studio movie set on another world and in space. But filmed and acted as if they've just gone down the road, as if it's Nashville or something, and they're just shooting people talking to each other. Although having said that, they do that, but they also make it still look beautiful, which is, it's not like a shaky cam home movie nightmare. Which I think it was still important to cinematographers. It was a long way away from the time when kind of location filming would become so easy that you could just pick up a camera and go, and things still had a kind of beauty to them, even if it was depicting real life and it was supernaturalistic. I mean, the cinematographer David Watkin was the master of that, really. He shot in natural light, but his movies were always incredibly beautiful. So So is it my go or your go next? It's It's your go again. I think. What's your number 3, Ian?
My number 3. Well, we mentioned it before, but just sound design in general. But the thing that really made me put pen to paper, apart from, like I said, Lambert's screams over the comm when she's dying, which chill me to the bone, but also the when Dallas is in the ducts, and they're telling him to close the doors behind him, and the way the Irish shut with that scraping sound is like a guillotine, basically. Is genius. But also the computers clunking around, the noise computers make. It's so just and then that's before you even get to the music, which is amazing as well. But just the actual, the actual sound design. Just the sound design is just
my number
amazing.
3 is the score, actually, so we can go on to talk about the music in this bit. So,
Yeah.
But take it away.
Well, just. I mean, I guess I'm basically it's just a brilliantly designed soundscape.
It really
utterly
is
convincing, and it's it kind of it's almost they're not quite brave enough to go. It's silent in space, so you can't hear anything, but it kind of pretty much it almost is, because it just has a sort of, it's almost like you can hear what's inside the spaceship when we're seeing the outside. And then it has that, for some reason there's that heartbeat that, the engine makes a very heartbeat kind of, and and it's hard to tell what's actually on the soundtrack and what's actually noises from the spaceship, but just in general, the whole environment sounds real to complement the visuals.
I do remember
that added on afterwards.
I remember that the critic John Brosnan wrote a very positive review of the movie, but he did also say, but as a science fiction fan, I do wish that a movie whose tagline was "In space, no one can hear you scream" would have made less noise in the space scenes. But you're right, though, when the Nostromo comes past at the beginning, it isn't kind of a Star Wars. It is like you're hearing the internal noise of the engines.
Just going. It's basically a bit like you'd shoot a submarine. Like whenever they show a submarine underwater, you kind of hear what's inside the submarine rather than the nothing noise that a submarine would make. And you hear the sonar as well. That kind of thing.
Seeing as you've mentioned it a couple of times, just with Lambert's death screams, which I agree with you are incredibly disturbing. I'm asking this just because it gets said a lot. Did they strike you as sexual? Because they never did me, to be honest. And I think I first watched this movie as a hormonal teenager, but that just didn't occur to me.
I've heard that before as well, and it's a bit like, I don't think to the point where you could say, oh, they're being dodgy, or they're definitely intended it to sound sexual, any more than, I don't know, Doug Tanyan running along in Doug Tanyan's sounded sexual. Do you remember that?
No.
You didn't expect me to talk about Doug Tanyan. Just, we used to always say that when we were kids.
What do you mean?
Juliet. And they're running along.
The Musker Hounds are we talking about?
Yeah, the Musker Hounds.
Yeah.
Sounded like they were doing it.
Right.
But anyway, that's a tangent I didn't expect to pop in my head. But no, I guess I didn't, because it sounds like someone being killed horribly.
Yeah,
basically. And I don't know. Yeah,
I think sometimes
I was seeing it as well is, I don't think you'd. It's weird because the alien wasn't established as a creature in our heads, and it's weird how little you see of it. This thing that we know what it looks like so much from other films and from other media. But the fact is, I don't think you'd actually design her death like that, because it's a bit like, now I was there going, why didn't we hear that of the thing taking a brain out? Because that's what we've got used to. But the fact is, this alien seems to do something much weirder, or not weirder, just kill people. But the fact is she just hyperventilating because she's about to die. Seems to you know, but then it doesn't seem to. I don't know. Yeah, it's just weird because it's not as established as a, you know, here comes the xenomorph. What he does is he sticks a thing in your brain and you die in a second. It's a lot more. You know, the noises don't quite compute with the sort of standard xenomorph that we've kind of got in our heads now.
Well, obviously it was the first film, and they weren't thinking about future films either. But I think they deliberately, I think they probably at the script level had a definite idea what the alien was doing, but they've made that vaguer as they edited the movie because it helped the movie. So, you know, there is the extended cut where you see that the alien has not killed Brett and it's not killed Dallas, and it impregnates them and turns them into eggs.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So presumably it would do that to the other crew members as well, but at the same time it doesn't. You don't know what it does to Lambert, but it doesn't seem to have done that to Parker. He looks definitely dead.
From his POV, the jaw went into his brain, didn't it?
Oh well, I always. I mean that sequence is very quickly shot, and I always thought that it went into his chest actually, but I could be wrong. I'll tell you something about that scene that I always thought. Before the alien kills him, Parker shouts something to Lambert, and to me it always sounded like he went very Northern England for a minute and said, "Get out of the road," to her, which we say meaning, you know, get out of the way. But when I looked at the script, the line is apparently "get out of the room," which is just kind of struck me as oddly disappointing. I like the colloquialism of it, but also just "get out of the room" seems like a weirdly functional thing to say about, like, wouldn't he just say "go" or something? But
we live on a spaceship. What room?
Yes.
No. I mean, but just in general, just the whatever's happening to her doesn't sound good. But I'd forgotten about the fact that the impregnation bit, because it's weirdly is set up, isn't it? The whole where's his body?
Yes. I mean, have you seen the extended version?
I have years ago now. But there's that whole thing. There's no blood. He's just gone, which is actually weird thing to leave hanging without any resolution. It just she's taking him away and eating him, because if we don't see anything else happen.
But in a way that does help because it adds to the mystery. But like you say, it's strange that it's then not resolved. But apparently they were going to keep that scene in towards the end, but Scott felt that it just killed the pace towards the end. And it's strange how there's exactly a deliberately similar echoing scene of that at the end of Aliens, where Ripley's running through the hive and she finds Burke, Paul Reiser, who's been cocooned, and they cut it from the sequence for exactly the same reason. Because, she's running for her life.
Yeah, and also in Aliens, that's a double beat, because we've already had what is it, a goddamn town meeting, and we've already had that. Everyone's there, and it's just fine that Burke's been killed. There's no need to have him to get yet another person who needs executing to save them. We've already had that, so I could see why they cut that. But no, it would have been a whole different. Well, not a whole different film, but it would have. Well, they didn't. The cut we have is this one, but I don't think it would have hurt it at all to answer that little why was his body.
They could have answered it somehow, some other way. I think the extended cut is Ridley Scott's preferred version now, but of course it would be. But but on the other hand, I'm sure he'd probably change it further if he could as well, as he did with Blade Runner,
maybe
all those times. So
So what's your next pick?
Well, my number 3 dovetails nicely with yours, which is the score.
Oh yeah.
And there's a slight caveat to it. This movie was one of the movies which made me really take notice of the musical scores in films and music in general, actually. And weirdly, the other movies which had the same effect on me at the same time were the Star Trek movies.
Mm-hmm.
And the first 3 Star Trek movies, like the first 2 Alien films, either have music by Jerry Goldsmith or James Horner.
Mm-hmm.
And what Goldsmith does in Alien, there's a certain amount of the kind of space romance that he does in Star Trek, but just tamped down with this absolutely terrifying otherworldliness, which if you then, as I did, go to Goldsmith's other work and take notice, you know, he really loves that bonkers dissonant orchestral craziness. The Planet of the Apes score is all of that from start to finish. But I think in Alien, it's just such a perfect mix. I think that connecting to what you said about the sound design, there are parts where you think, is that a sound effect or is that part of the score? I mean, you know, there's a kind of doomy drone, almost like a distant wind that's in both Alien and Aliens, that's sort of like ooh, and I think mentally I associate it with the scenes on the planet, like it's part of the atmosphere of the planet. But then when I was rewatching the My Lucky Star scene that we just discussed, I noticed that when the alien comes out of the ducting in that scene, that sound effect comes back with it. You've got that kind of ooh, and I think that must therefore be something that Goldsmith did bring to it. Also, this was the first CD I ever bought, this soundtrack. Or not bought, because I didn't buy it. I was given it for Christmas at the age of about 15. And it's an absolutely terrifying experience just sitting and listening to this music. And it's even more frightening than the film. Well, there are parts of it. There are parts of the soundtracks you may know, Ian, that aren't in the movie.
Right, yeah.
They mocked around with it extremely, and Goldsmith was quite irritated. But if you look at the interview with him on the DVD, he talks about how he wrote. He was definitely going throughout the whole score for this kind of more romantic feel, which he thought would counterintuitively work because the movie isn't at all romantic, and and it doesn't really go with that kind of space truckers vibe. But he didn't want to lay things on too thick, and I think he also wanted to mean that work it so that the frightening stuff when it came was really powerful. So he wrote this kind of romantic overture that went over the opening credits, and the producers basically went, "Oh no, do it again, not scary enough." And he has this quote where he says he spent about a day writing the score for the opening credits, and then they didn't like it, so he wrote another one in 10 minutes. and it is basically just the one on the movie is just like 2 or 3 notes, isn't it? It's just like
it does. I can see their point now, because I love that sort of moving, kind of sad, romantic stuff, especially when it's at the end, because it kind of says we're in space and space is big, and it's kind of, but there is something brilliant about the opening saying scary movie.
Yes, and also, well, no, go on.
I'm just saying, because it basically is very unsettling and brilliant, and I'd say you know, your opening shot of a movie, sound and shot and everything is all important.
Yeah.
And it's a spaceship with some spooky music, and it makes you go, "This isn't Star Wars."
Yeah.
This is it's a haunted house floating in space, basically.
And what you say is correct. He doesn't just do it; he does it brilliantly. And I love the way the score is made up of those kind of atonal thumps and sounds, and so a lot of the opening titles is just a thing going like an echoing dun 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 dun. And that kind of happens throughout, and a weird sound that kind of like sounds like bones being hit together. And it's just fantastic. But apparently, they do cut down some of the scarier music as well, because once the movie really kind of goes full on kind of monster movie, he lets rip with that stuff. He really goes for it. There's some genuinely spine-chilling, terrifying sounds that come out of that orchestra. And the producers cut a lot of it because they thought it was already really scary. It didn't need to be underlined, and it would kind of push it into the realms of parody. And they may have been right at certain points, but I do think that he wrote this nice, intense piece called "Acid Test" for the bit where they try and extract the facehugger from Kane's head. Release it rather, and it bleeds acid, which then eats. That's
my next choice. In fact, is
okay. Well,
Segan's
it's a
segue into it.
we'll go. Yeah.
Like a weirdo.
Well, I'll finish what I'm saying about the music here then. But so in the movie they put on this kind of weird underscore to it, which is almost a bit comedic. And I think maybe they should have stuck with what he wrote on that occasion. I also think he wrote a wonderful end title, which I've listened to so much now, I always think about it. When I think about this movie, I hear that music. And then when I watch the movie, they replaced it entirely with some source music. This kind of warm orchestral swell. And it's beautiful in its own way, but I wish they'd stuck with what Jerry Goldsmith wrote.
Well, I must say, I know the soundtrack well because I quite often have it on loop when I'm writing.
Right.
Because it's weird, because quite a lot of horror movies, they sound great, but you can't work to them because
right.
Like, what the fuck's going on? But this is one that I just have on loop, and it's kind of creepy and atmospheric, but at the same time, it's kind of relaxing enough. So it's it's an amazing soundtrack.
Yeah,
it is.
He was a master, and he had a long career, and in fact, all of the Alien movies were made before we get to kind of Alien versus Predator and that kind of era of it. But all of the Ripley Alien movies were made within Jerry Goldsmith's lifetime. And I was always surprised that he never came back, or it was never asked back. But oddly, after he died, Ridley Scott seemed to change his mind about Goldsmith's music and the more romantic themes, because those pieces are more prevalent in Prometheus and Alien Covenant than they probably were in Alien. Right. He does use them a lot. And actually, this is totally off topic, I guess, but of all the later Alien movies, Alien Covenant is the one which has the greatest musical score that sounds like this and sounds like Alien, that has a wonderful balance between that kind of romance, but also...
Prometheus and Covenant, I also worked to their soundtracks as well, and I can't stand the films. I hate the films, but the music's great. And
I don't know the Prometheus one, but I certainly agree with Covenant, and I've listened to that score a lot.
Yeah. But moving on to my next one. Like I said, I mean, there's so many good scenes, but I do love. I think we take it for granted now, but the whole acid for blood thing is just genius. But it's a really good shock, you know. Oh, it's going to be icky, and there's so many things in this that we take for granted that you just like put yourself in the, you know, in the mind of someone who's seeing this in 1979. It does so many cool things. Not just that there's a, you know, the fact that Ash is an android is like the least surprising of them. That's a pretty good twist. There's acid for blood. They think it's dead. It's burst out of his chest, and then it's grown into this massive alien. All these different things it does, and it doesn't do them. It's weird because on paper you'd maybe go, "This is just making up as it goes along," but actually, because it happens so organically and feels convincing, it's just a masterpiece of like, you know, of imaginative fiction, because it feels like a real organism that they don't know how it works. And the fact is the audience doesn't, so in a weird way they are just literally making it up, because that's what it is. It's made up, but it feels like a life cycle that makes sense.
It feels like,
you know, and it's
I don't think we understand it fully, but it feels like it's got a logic to it. You know, that we're not quite privy to, but the layers of defense and the way that the different forms of the alien transmit the egg from inside the shell to inside the host, and all that kind of thing. Absolutely, and I think it is a great scene. The acid blood scene. I love the way just the effects are actually incredible. The acid effects.
Yeah, well, I was also going to say it looks great, but also it's a really good. Another little thing is it's something that's happening. So it's you know, it's a piece of plot happening, but it's working on so many different levels. And one of the levels is it shows you all the levels. It's a really good way of showing you the geography of how big the spaceship is, and you know, so you get this real feeling that, you know, there's so many decks, and you know, it's a reminder of that. Feels like such a real place, doesn't it? This Airfix kit we see basically going by in space, you know, the great big model, and it just feels like a real big, massive, big thing. And because we see quite a lot of it, or, you know, it feels like a real place that they're in.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And the acid burning through is a really good sort of thing. But it's weird as well because it doesn't actually come into play again in the film, does it?
That's true, actually. Good point.
It's because that's something that's massively in Aliens. It's the whole acid for blood. But actually, it doesn't come into play at all. So as a plot device, it's got acid for blood, but it doesn't spray acid on anyone. Certainly, for some reason, it doesn't spit acid like it does in other films.
Yes.
In other shit films. This alien doesn't seem to vomit acid on people.
Well, I guess it's just there to underline
how alien it is. But yeah,
not just how alien, but how dangerous. You know, you can't shoot this thing, even though they don't have guns anyway. Really,
no.
You got to be careful what you do to it, because if you knock something off it can cause untold damage. And it is uncompromising throughout the film that, you know, the alien is never damaged. It's never in a, you know, Ripley has to blow it out of the airlock. And then fire the retro rockets at it when it crawls into the rocket kind of silo. But we don't see that kills it. It just floats away, you know, and they do succeed in selling the idea of this invincible, as Ash describes it, perfect organism.
Yeah, yeah.
That they don't, because a lot of stories of this type do set up something as being really powerful, but then you have to have an ending where the heroes win, so something happens, and too often it's like they kind of take back one of those rules, but Alien doesn't take anything back, and that's one of the sequels do potentially, but but for
not the only sequel that counts. We mustn't go into the future, but that's why Aliens is such a good film, because it respects this film that we're discussing completely.
Yes, and listener, Ian and I talked at length about that a while ago. The link to that episode will be in the show notes if you want to hear.
And Alien 3. And I think when we do Covenant and Prometheus, we do them as one podcast, because I don't think I could bear doing them as a separate podcast.
That might be reasonable. It
will be interesting
will be sometime in the future,
because I've only seen them both once, and I might be completely wrong. I had a student. This is a sort of sidebar, but I had a student a couple of years ago, and God bless people, they're new and they're young, so they're completely unhindered. And she's like, I've just, I'm getting to watch all these films, and I decided to watch all of the Alien films, and I just, what's your favorite Alien film? Because people are laughing at me for mine. I went, well, it's Alien and Aliens, and she went, I just love Covenant, and she just sat down and watched them all over a few days, and Covenant was like where they really got it right for her. Absolutely loved it. And she's watched it over and over again, and the others weren't. So so maybe I'm completely wrong, or maybe it's what you want. Or maybe it's it. But that's something to talk about in the future. But maybe it's the expectation. Maybe they won't be as bad now. I know what happens in them. Yeah. But then I thought that with Alien 3 when they'd killed Newt and Hicks, and I still found it ruined the film from the beginning. But anyway, they're already covered in other podcasts. But
we will come to that in the future.
The acid chase, chasing the acid. Well, actually, what I really wrote down actually is because one of my favourite little lines is, "Here, have your pen back."
Yes, I was going to say that because it's not
Harry Dean Stanton's.
On top of everything else, that scene is a great character scene. The way Parker says, "Don't get under it." Yeah. It's just really nice, They don't all get on very well, but
it's another thing that because it's such a weird make believe thing, but everyone's reacting in real ways.
Yeah.
It's like, don't get under it. Like they have no idea what's going on, but it feels completely convincing that this is what it's like if you suddenly find an alien dripping acid through your spaceship. Yeah, this is kind of how you run around panicking, trying to deal with things, with people shouting at each other.
It's another example of how they're relatable as co-workers. They don't necessarily like each other that much. Mostly, they've got their own little cliques, but they don't wish each other ill either. On the whole, they care about each other. And but there is a lovely comedy moment where Tom Skerritt says, "What have you got a pen there?" And he uses Parker's pen to probe the acid hole and then gives it back to him. Like, thanks very much.
No, it's brilliant. So what's your penultimate pick then?
So my number 2, well, seeing as we're talking about Harry Dean Stanton in that moment,
that's my last pick as well, but
you can tell me if it's the Pacific same pick. It's the death of Brett.
Okay.
Number 2. Because
mine is in that scene, but
okay.
To go granular.
Well, let's talk about it next then. Okay, so
that's my final pick. So
okay,
so yes,
let's swap around. So
my actual pick, on the granular level, is just the way he takes his cap off and puts his and is all sweaty and puts his head under the water.
Okay.
It's just like, it just epitomizes why Harry Dean Stanton is so amazing in this film. But I just always like that, taking his hat off. It feels so real. it's a bit like I don't know. It's when you see something on film that just makes you go, that I can feel that, because that's what, taking your hat off when you're sweaty and getting water on you. It's like when you see a character put bare feet on a nice warm carpet or something. You kind of put something in your brain. But I also think, I mean, this is your scene for your pick. But I also think what we were sort of talking about before about the way they sort of, the dance they play with the audience of when the jumps are going to come, when the deaths are going to come, who's going to get killed when. Because, I mean, this is your pick, isn't it? But to me, it's very, this is almost the cheesiest it gets. This is the don't go down into the cellar. It's just go and get the cat. Okay, I'll go and get the cat by myself. So this is the scene where you know who's going to die.
Yes.
Or do you?
Or
do you because they've been quite clever? So maybe it's going to be a. So that's the dance they're playing.
But also,
as a person, you're probably there going, "Oh, this is going to be a false scare," or is it? Or is it? So you're there on the edge of your seat, basically.
Well, I try and put myself into the mind of viewers, uninformed viewers in '79 who didn't know what the fully grown alien looked like.
That's true as well.
What they're expecting, it's last time they saw it was a little penis-shaped monster on a table. And that's what they've been hunting for. They've been expecting that. So in a way, they probably think it's maybe less dangerous than the cats.
No, so logically, you just don't know what's coming next with this film. But at the same time, you don't go, what? Because it doesn't feel arbitrary or made up. It doesn't feel like for the sake of it. It's got its own logic, and so you go, oh yeah, it's massive now. And at no point, I mean, there's a really good podcast you should put a link to, Science versus Fiction. Which is, they're all there. It's a scientist and a film critic in America, and all their episodes are worth listening to. But their one on Alien is really good because they love the film, but the scientist is going, this life form makes no sense. This life form makes no sense. You cannot possibly, like, what's he been eating?
Yes.
To grow that big that quickly, it must have been eating. There must be a supply of rats or something. It just but they're kind of picking it apart in an amusing way, and the same way as they go, why do spaceships have self-destruct mechanisms? What's the possible internal logic of a self-destruct?
yes.
Do you have self-destruct on battleships? No, you don't.
But also with the
on oil rigs, no, oil rigs don't have self-destruct mechanisms.
With the aliens' biology, that's part of the mystery and the way they've deliberately not explained things, which maybe do get over-explained later in other movies. So some people think that the alien is like a bioweapon that's been engineered, so it's meant to do that. But who knows? We've just got very little information. About it. But the wonderful thing is you're not expecting it. Also, I love that it subverts the cat scare thing, because even though I'm not sure how often, I think that there are cat scares not unnaturally in cat people, which was the 40s. So I think horror movies have probably been using cats to generate false scares for a long time, and they still are. And in fact, Alien does. In the previous scene, the cat appears and it's a jump scare when you think it's going to be the alien. And then when the alien does appear, when Brett is looking for the cat, the alien doesn't appear until after the cat has appeared again. And in fact, the cat sees the alien first. And I love the way the framing of it happens. So, you see the cat emerging from its cranny that it's been hiding in. But then it cuts to a close-up of Brett looking at it, and you just see part of the alien come past behind him out of focus.
It's brilliant.
You can't even really make out which bit of the creature it is. Probably the tail, but in fact, again, like you said before, we know what the alien looks like now because we're so used to it. But if there had been only this one film, what would you have put together in your head that the alien looked like? Because you don't get a full view of it until it's fired out of the ship at the end.
No, I mean,
it's just a load of bits.
I guess when it kills Brett, you see that it's big and it's lifted him up and it's a big black shape and it's bipedal and it's got arms. So that's enough. That's enough to go into monster.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you even see his legs at that point, though.
Yeah.
So you don't really know how it walks. You can tell that it's been played by a man and it's kind of humanoid in shape in the top half, but at the same time you don't really know how it's moving. You don't really know how the tail really works.
Yeah.
So they are just trying to kind of limit your view of it and turn it into a kind of a jigsaw puzzle thing. So you just get hints. Which is why different designers worked on different bits of the creature and stuff. In many ways, I really respect and kind of prefer what James Cameron did in the second one, which is just going, look, you know what it looks like? We've only got it's dancers dressed as monsters. We've only got a few of them. You'll see them, but they're going to move really fast and jump around. It'll be great. Whereas Alien is a bit like... certain parts of it seem like they're going, it's not really a man in a suit, really, and they're desperately trying to kind of hide the fact that it's a man in a suit. But then a couple of points, you can tell that it's
back to Jaws in space. It's it's all about the creepiness, and this alien is definitely a lot slower than they are when we see them in Aliens.
Sorry, I just kicked my microphone. Yes, but it does, like Jaws, the fact that the monster is a bit flawed when you get a good view of it doesn't matter. That's right at the end of the movie.
No, but also I don't think it's flawed. You don't go, oh, wish they hadn't. Yeah, like the shark does look crap, like
right
in Jaws. There's no getting away from that. It looks crap, and kids laugh at it when they see the movie now, whereas I show Alien to my kids and they don't go, that looks crap. It's 1979 and the Alien doesn't look crap. That's pretty amazing.
No, I mean, that's true. Although, I've never minded the shark in Jaws, to be honest.
Well, I don't mind it because it's like an amazing film, but if you actually look at it and you watch it when you watch it with someone who's not invested in it and they're just watching it as a movie, they get the bit with Jaws and Quint's about to get eaten and they go, ah! Look at that.
Oh dear.
It's rubbish.
I still find that chilling, but I guess that's me. I always will.
But they do the same with, like, some of the effects in The Exorcist, so
yeah. And the other thing about the Alien is that this helps it in a way because we know that the alien is a humanoid thing because we've got a good look at it in the other movies. It doesn't matter that there are points where it's clearly humanoid-ish in this movie, and you can see that it moves in a slightly human-like way and all that. That's fine. It just makes me think that they were desperate to not give that impression in this movie, and there's just a couple of moments towards the end where they show slightly too much, but it's not really criticism because it works fine.
But also right at the end, I think, there's just it's a genius film. The bit where its head is weird and bulbous and just lying on its side.
Yes.
And the whole bit you were talking about before, where she realizes it's in the ship and it's having a rest. Luckily, having a rest, and she even has to wake it up. But yeah, there's just something about that head that is very alien and slightly disturbing. And I guess the only bit that struck me was the claws look like someone with a glove on.
Yes.
So that's the main bit to me that looks a bit, there's some gloves. But we're really picking apart a movie from 1979.
But also the bit where you get a look at the claw is that amazing jump scare where she's not noticed it's there and she just presses the buttons.
No, it made me jump yesterday, the day before yesterday when I watched it. It literally made me jump.
Yeah, It's
pretty,
fantastic.
Pretty amazing.
Also, just the design. I mean, you can't say enough about the design in Alien and all of the great artists.
Neither of us has picked that because it's just so obvious, isn't it? But
yeah, but
just amazing.
But just the fact that when the alien is secreted in that section at the end, it looks like part of the ship, which is a massive coincidence because they're on the escape shuttle. It was not designed by whoever made the alien, but it's the piping and everything matches the alien's head exactly. So, it's completely credible that Ripley would not notice that, although maybe a bit weird that she doesn't know the design of the ship. But it is only the escape pod, I suppose, and maybe you wouldn't spend a lot of time in it.
Yeah. It's not an escape pod, though, is it? It's the shuttle, because there's that whole bit where...
that's right.
They can't all fit in it.
Yeah, and it's the place where Dallas goes to relax. Yeah. There's that great scene sitting in there.
Yeah, we've got a mining craft. Got a mining craft with a self-destruct option, but we haven't got enough lifeboats for the whole crew.
Yes, yeah.
So there's where the internal logic.
Well, but the Titanic made the same mistake, and that was real.
That's true. Well, you could also say it's also, the sin of the movie is corporate greed. So of course nothing quite works, and everything's a bit crap, and there's not enough room.
Yeah. All right, Ian. So I've just noticed the time, so we better get on to our last.
Yeah. Your final pick.
Well, should we go right to mine? To my favourite scene, my number one is the reveal of the space jockey.
Oh yeah.
Just them entering that chamber in the crashed spaceship, and the way you've got that tight close up of John Hurt as he looks over the ridge, and sees something unspeakable, and looks kind of awestruck, and then you have the long shot pulling back to reveal the space jockey on its seat, and that's one of the shots where I think Ridley Scott employed his own children to play miniature spacemen in the background to make the perspective, to force the perspective a bit and make everything seem bigger, and it just looks incredible. And again, linking back to things we've already said about, so you've got the score in that sequence is amazing. The way, as soon as it cuts to the wide shot, you've got that da-dung, 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 and then the strings come in, the vibrating strings. Yeah. And that's when you listen to that just on its own, it's really flesh creeping. Also, the wonderful moment for Lambert, and that great line where she says that the thing which could have saved everybody's lives and is the right thing to say. She just says, "Let's get the hell out of here."
Well, Lambert, it's weird seeing Ripley because we think of Ripley as let's take off and nuke the place from orbit, but maybe she's been informed by the fact that there's that scene where Lambert goes, "Yeah, we go to the shuttle and we blow this fucking thing up and we leave." And Ripley goes, "No, I don't think so."
Yeah. And, it is actually Lambert's plan that Ripley ends up doing in the movie. So.
No, brilliant. Oh, Lambert. But Veronica Cartwright lives in Bristol.
Does she really?
Yeah, according to the internet, she's 73 years old at time of recording and lives in Bristol.
Oh, fantastic!
So, which is
she'll have some stories to tell.
You should look her up.
Yeah, definitely. And just the final bit about that scene, the way the end of the scene is a dimly lit close up on the face of the dead alien. It just lingers on it for ages. And then that's the last time you see it. It's the last time you see it until the movie Prometheus. But it just it's the mystery, the sense of all the kind of Lovecraftian ancient mystery of it. Is just beautifully achieved in that scene. And I love that the movie doesn't go back to it at all. It doesn't explore that. It just leaves you with that dreadful implication. Dallas looking down at its chest and saying, like he exploded from inside. and you can completely understand why Lambert would instantly go, let's just go home. Let's forget about this.
The whole it exploded from inside, and then then it just sort of zooms in on the terror that's on that alien's face.
Yeah.
And then it goes to black, and that is, it's brilliant foreshadowing of you're all gonna die. This is coming for you. But no, it's fantastic.
So what's your number one, Ian?
No, we've had my number one, haven't we? Because
sorry, I thought you were
first.
Well,
Harry Dean Stanton was 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh yeah, you're right. No, 5. Yeah, no, I've had my 5.
All right. Oh, okay.
I've had Veronica Cartwright, sound design, the acid chase, Ash, you do your job and I'll do mine, and then finally Harry Dean Stanton taking his hat off.
Okay.
Segued into yours.
Yeah.
So
and that is the line that I was trying to remember. You do your job and let me do mine. Yes. Yeah.
It is also the milk drinking.
Yeah. Oh, so, that's wonderful. So
yeah.
Listener, those are our top 5, or rather our top 10 of wonderful things from Alien. Although we could probably pick another 10.
Oh, we certainly could. We certainly could.
Watching bits of it again did make me think, I need to watch this. So
yeah.
It's one of those movies that I've watched regularly all my life, and even like when Alien vs Predator came out, not that one, Requiem, the sequel to Alien vs Predator, which is just dreadful. It was laughable. But I came home and I put the DVD of Alien on. I was like, no, this is still fantastic. When Prometheus came out and it was, let's say problematic, especially because it was Ridley Scott. But then you put on the DVD of Alien and you go, no, it's absolutely fantastic. It's pretty much flawless. And I need to do that every few years, I think. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. But yeah. Anyway, we should probably wrap up. Get into the old freezerinos.
Yeah, indeed. Back to the old freezerinos. God bless Brett. So before we finish up, Ian, have you got anything that you'd like to recommend at the moment? I've got a couple of things to mention.
I probably, I haven't got anything to recommend other than I've just got my Ghostwatch Blu-ray, and I'm looking forward to rewatching it because I haven't seen that for a long time, and also then watching it with our own Stella's commentary,
which is wonderful.
It's very cool. Yeah. I shared that on Twitter the other day. I don't know if you saw our pod. Well, I tagged in Stephen Volk and Stella, and Stephen retweeted it, but just with a link to our episode when we all interviewed Stephen.
That Blu-ray does have a very strong whiff of our podcast because it's not just Stella and Stephen Volk, but also Rob Savage is on there as well.
Oh yeah. But I don't think we can take credit for Rob Savage being in touch with Stephen.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you reminded me. But no, it's a wonderful set. It really is. I put links to it the other week. I recommend it to anyone. But also, you've got. I guess you've never read the short story.
No, I was
3110. Have you?
No, I started reading it today. I'm gonna but I've managed to just open it and look at things. And at some point,
it is lovely, and the booklet of essays is very nice as well. So
yeah,
I've read those are good that I've read. Okay, so just a couple of things I wanted to mention in terms of recommendation, listener. When this episode drops, which I think will be on the 25th, you've got about 24 hours, maybe a bit more, to watch The Mist, which is on All4 at the moment, Channel 4.
The movie, not the TV series.
Yeah, the movie. I've not seen the series.
I had to review the TV series, and I could see why it didn't get renewed. but I'd
Right.
also quite liked it. Like
Okay.
spinning out the Mist idea into a TV series kind of worked. I mean, it's trashy as all hell as well, but it was kind of. I could have watched another season of it.
Right. Okay.
But it's yeah. But anyway, but
I love the movie, and I can imagine
the
it
movie's
being
amazing.
spun out
The movie's
to
amazing.
an extent. If you can find a way to keep that tension going for several more hours, I'd watch it. I can imagine that. I just don't know if you could do it as a 10-hour TV series, or especially a multi-season TV series. But
Yeah,
but,
no, they find a way of basically it happens, and it's almost like, I guess, a bit like the zombie apocalypse
right.
has happened. It's a bit like, well, this has happened, so we're all trying to survive in it. So they eke it out basically, but in quite a good way. I think I could see, I could appreciate, but it wasn't to be past season
Right.
one. But I'd still say fans should watch it. But yeah, it's not a patch on the amazing movie, which is like,
Yeah.
I think, is that the best Stephen King adaptation apart from The Shining? It's probably up there.
There's a few good ones now, aren't there? It's not like when I was growing up, it was kind of a truism that there were no good Stephen King films.
Yeah.
But now there are a few. But yeah, I can't think.
Well, yeah,
of
there's
one.
Misery. We always forget because it's not a.
Well, the kind of rule is that if it's a supernatural story, it's a bad film. But the films based on his non-supernatural stories tend to be good, like Stand By Me and things like that. But The Mist is
then there's Dreamcatcher. And,
I've not seen that, but I've heard enough about
something
it.
slipped through, and it's people having alien diarrhea.
Yes.
Tagline is something slipped through.
Oh my good God. That is, that's a pitch.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you've not seen The Mist, do check it out. It's absolutely wonderful.
And a movie, the most horror-related thing I did watch the other day, because it was a gap, so lots of our listeners probably have already beat me to it. But I finally watched Veronica, the scary Spanish Ouija board sort of Spain's answer to The Exorcist, and it's
I don't know about that one.
Oh, it's on Netflix right now, and it's been hyped up as the scariest movie ever made yet again, but it's actually just generally really well made.
Right.
Sort of naturalistic, teenage girl possessed after doing a Ouija board, which sounds exactly like The Exorcist, doesn't it? But it's got a bit more to that, and it's got a lot of the sort of inherent Catholicism of Spain in it, and it's a Spanish language movie. Oh God, yeah, go and watch it. It's it's 90 minutes and it's done, and it's brilliant. But yeah, it's been a sort of massive hit thanks to global hit thanks to Netflix.
Right. Okay.
So you maybe think that's not such a bad thing to recommend.
Yeah,
it's 5 years old, but yeah,
right.
Still doing the round.
Have I never heard of it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just called Veronica, and it's got a blind nun in it. It's which is a bit dodgy because people being scared of people with disabilities is very old school. But at the same time, the nun who's blind is also a goodie, so that's kind of cool.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely go and watch that. Let me know what you think next pod.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, nice one, man. That's a good shout. And I just want to mention the other thing I've been watching 2 years after everyone else is something that you recommended a good while ago, which is Russell T Davies's "It's a Sin."
Did you cry a lot?
I've not cried yet, but it is deep. I've not finished it yet, but it is deeply sad at points. And to be honest, we discussed when we were talking about it before that obviously it's not really horror. It is about a deeply horrifying subject.
Oh yeah.
So, and for that reason, I was kind of scared to watch it. Actually, don't be scared to watch it. It's full of joy and full of life, but it will crush your heart. But I did want to mention it on this podcast because the relevance to a horror fan, as far as I can see, is that The one weird detail about it is that the lead character is called Richie Tozier. Do you remember that? Played by Ollie Alexander. And every time I hear his name, I think about the character. Well, this is a good circular link. I think about the character Richie Tozier from Stephen King's It.
Right.
I just think that name's just too similar.
Well.
I wonder if like the new movie of It was out when he was writing the script, and that just kind of went in by osmosis.
Maybe. But yeah. It's amazing.
It is.
I'm
by the way,
well overdue a rewatch of that.
As a recommendation, everybody, that show is on All4 as well, and I think we'll stay there because they're so proud of it. But it's on BritBox. If you don't like adverts and you pay for BritBox, watch it on BritBox. But if you can get it for free on All4, so and it is wonderful. And it's and I love the fact that it's kind of proudly filmed in Manchester, even though it's set in London. They don't even really try to. Sorry?
There's a bit in Chester as well, because there's a bit in the cathedral which is sort of pretending to be the Houses of Parliament corridors. And I was like, I've been to a wedding reception there. That's not the Houses of Parliament. That's Chester. Chester Cathedral. But yeah, no, it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant show. One of the best British television programmes of, like literally of all time, for my money. It's kind of up there in the annals of British television. Will be added on the end to the usual, like Edge of Darkness and all those sort of things, and then It's a Sin and Our Friends in the North and all those things. It's absolutely brilliant. It's fantastic. Yeah. Anyway,
on that note, then, it's kind of on that rather non-horrific note, but a note of real enthusiasm, which there's been a lot of in this episode.
Yeah.
We'll say goodbye for this week. Thank you very much for listening, friends, and we'll be back to discuss more horror and horror-adjacent stuff in the future. Thank you, Ian, for your enthusiasm and your insights.
Yeah, cheers, man. I love this film again.
No, and I love that you've taken my suggestion that we just ramble nonsensically about Alien without structure and turned it into something really interesting.
Yeah.
A rundown of those many great elements.
Yeah.
So we shall talk about other Alien films at a later date. I'm sure that we'll come back to this from time to time.
Yeah, well, we've got to bite the bullet and do Prometheus and Covenant. Probably if we do them while they're on Disney, then I don't have to go and buy the bastards.
That's a good compromise. Hey, Ian, I read the book. Anyway, we'll get into that.
Yeah, fade out. I look forward to actually gleefully talking about the android playing your flute. And banging my head against the wall while I'm doing it.
Oh dear. We all look.
Where do we go from this sublime piece of cinema to there's an android playing a fucking flute? Being pretentious. God.
Dear. Oh well.
And on that.
well, I'm going to fade you down on that.
Yeah, fucking flute. Fucking android playing a fucking flute. What was he thinking?
You have been listening to And Now the Podcast Starts. Produced and released by Ambidextrous Solutions Limited. Presented by Ian Winterton and T.D. Velasquez. Special thanks to Greg Hume for our original theme music and to Brian Gorman for our original artwork. All dialogue and music clips from films, TV shows, and trailers are used for the purposes of criticism in the spirit of fair dealing as defined in UK law and fair use as defined in US law. No copyright infringement is intended. Please visit our home on the web, www.andnowpodcast.com, for more content and contact details. Or visit our Facebook pages at AndNowPod or at Lee Cushing Pod. Follow us on Twitter at AndNowPodcast or at Lee Cushing Podcast. If you'd like to donate to us, please visit patreon.com/andnowpodcast. And now, the podcast stops.